Oh, what
Okay,
about
as soon as we get a thumbs up
only
from
show
Nate.
participants with video, Anna?
Sorry?
Only show participants with video. Because that gets rid of everybody. That
That's
isn't.
right. Yeah, I have that.
You have that, okay, because now I only see
Yeah,
us.
that's brilliant. That just did that to me. So Nate, I don't know if you have the waffle bar. If you look at the waffle, there's a selection up top that says only show participants with video. And when you click on that, it takes away everybody with no video. And then Nate, if you could let us know when you are rolling.
Mine's got everybody.
Okay, he says it started. Okay, so then I'll call us back to order at 6:03, and we have nothing to report, no action taken in closed session. So I would like to ask for the approval of the agenda, please.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
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 Okay, opposed? Okay. All right, so I will ask if there is any public participation on agenda items. This is a special meeting, so we cannot have non-agenda items. So if anybody would like to comment, they can email in to Anna.
There's no public comment at this time.
Okay. All right. So we will go ahead and I will read our taping statement. Well, I guess we don't. Just know that we are, because there's no public comment or nobody here to talk. So just remember that we are videoed and this will be recorded. So please keep that in mind if you are doing everything you're supposed to be doing while you're being taped. Okay, so we'll move on to our budget workshop and I'll turn this over to Wendy.
Okay, so this is a very strange year, more strange than any we've had in a long time. In prior epochs, recessions and downturns have been more like watching hurricanes come across the Atlantic from off the coast of Africa. You can see them building, you can see them coming, the forecasts happen about, where it's going to hit and how hard it's going to hit, but you don't really know until it happens. But you can sort of get a little bit prepared. This has been more like an earthquake, a very large earthquake. The old adage that when the country gets a cold, California gets the flu. In this case, the world got the flu, and so California is in the ICU. The only good news is that over the last 8 years, Jerry Brown's focus has been on not giving us a lot of ongoing new revenue, a lot of repeated one-time money, and was also obsessive about setting up reserves and rainy day funds. It made us all crazy at the time because we had to deal with the recurring one-time money, not knowing whether we were going to have it, but it trained us well to not spend beyond our means. And so we were a little better prepared for it. But nobody was prepared for this. So the governor's May revise does, I think, as much as anybody could do given the forecasts to smooth out the impact with a combination of reductions and deferrals. And the reductions took out all of the things that had been added in January and pieced out some deferral language to where there would be, there's a little bit that's going to happen this year. There would be some next year and then some probably the second year. But it did try as much as possible to be a little bit prudent with what was being used and what was being added. And this is a time when we've already been struggling to keep up with our statutory increases. So it also acknowledged, the May revise acknowledged that this is probably going to take a while. The Congressional Budget Office this week said that it could take us 7 years to get completely out of this. because it's looking like it's going to be more of an L than a V or a U. So it's probably going to take a while for all of the segments of the economy to come back. They may revise, added the COLA, but then took 10% of our money away. So it's effectively about almost an 8% reduction in our funding from this year to next year. And included in that is 10% of our transportation money, which is about $30,000. Because that money, that's an amount that has never changed over the years. It did reduce the person STRS contribution a little bit, so that helped a little, not huge. And all of the reductions that were in that, and a lot of the categorical programs were reduced. The after-school program, the adult education program, CTIG. There are a lot of those that were slated for some kind of reduction. What was included in the governor's May revise was a trigger to restore those if the federal government comes up with more money to give to the states. So we would know in probably September or October if those things were going to happen, and we could bring them back. Now, the state legislature is pushing back. Both the States Assembly and the State Senate are trying to, what they're saying, hold us harmless for next year. They want to add the COLA. They want to keep the funding where it was going to be. Their proposal burns through all of the state reserves right away. They have not really given us a plan for what might happen in the out years. So that's a little bit of an unknown. And theirs has a trigger off provision. So if the federal government doesn't come through with the money in September, October, then what they're saying is they're not going to cut us, but they're going to push a third of our income from 2021 into the following year with no plan for when we would receive it. So we might be missing a third of our revenue for 3 months. And if you think about it, how long, given the length of the recovery we're going to be looking at, is it going to take the state to catch up to paying us a 1 1/3, 130% of what we're supposed to get to catch up? So it's going to be, my guess is probably a bunch of years of just like the mandated cost recovery of dribs and drabs of getting it back. And who knows how long that's going to take. So for me, for us, for planning, I think I would prefer to stick with what the governor did because we know what that's going to look like. Yes, we know there are going to be some deferrals, but they're not going to be as deep and they're not going to be as long. And the other difficulty is if the legislature gets their way, it's going to look very rosy next for 2021. But the problem is, like I said, we're not going to get all that money for a year and a half, and they're going to keep pushing that out until they can afford to pay it all back. So we're going to have to be able to have enough left over to float those 3 months. How many of us can do that comfortably? That's so the reductions we're going to be looking at proposing are very deep, but they need to be in order to keep us safe and solvent for the next couple of years. Other things that are a consideration is, we don't know what life is going to look like in August. We've gotten a lot of guidance for reopening that has lots of suggestions and lots of advice, but no real plans for how we're going to do this. We have been provided with some funds to help with mitigations, and we do have that in the budget, and we're making plans on things to do with that. We've ordered a lot of PPE. We're going to be using some of it for learning mitigations. And so, there has been a little bit of help with that. They are talking about holding us harmless for ADA. So whatever our ADA was this year would carry over to next year. which will be helpful for us because they cut it off early this year, and normally it hits at a month when we've lost a lot of ADA. So that probably is a good thing for us. And then we're still waiting on any kind of a word about flexibility with instructional days, instructional minutes, the flexibility of using categorical money, letting us use supplemental concentration for, especially since we have such a high percentage, being able to use it for district-wide things. And so when I show you this one little, it's actually 2 pages. It's one, and then there'll be another one. It's very basic numbers, and you'll see why we have to do what we have to do. And in looking at the reductions list, we try to be very purposeful about it, and we try to look at functions where the probable reduced numbers of students made it a logical area to consider reductions. And so that's why, some of the things you'll see that on there. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. I haven't done this before. Where did it happen to hold on here. No, you need to go away. Okay, present now. My entire screen, and let me bring this up. Okay, can you see that? Can everybody see that? Nobody can see it?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, Wendy, when you said present your screen, did you choose the right? Because you have several monitors, you should have been able to choose the right monitor.
Got it. Okay, I think it's this one. Okay. Share.
There we go.
Okay. So at second interim, mid-March, which seems like a year and a half ago, but it was only a couple of months, 3 months now. These are the numbers we had. These were our revenues. These were our expenses. And this is the net increase and decrease. And
so
yes,
hold on just a second, Wendy. Did you share your entire screen or just a fraction of it? Because it looks like you shared a fraction of it.
I have no idea. What's on my screen, all that's on my screen is this page. So
it's all good. Forget it.
What do I need to do?
If you go to share your screen, you pick the entire screen so that it's not just.
Okay, stop presenting. So what do I want to present? A window?
Yeah, your entire, when you hit the present now.
Oh, you know what I can do? I can put it up on the other screen. Hold on. Because if I can select the screen,
yes,
I can do that. Okay, I'm sorry. I have not done this before. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so let me put it up there. And then entire screen. And pick that one. Okay, what can you see now?
it's fine. Keep going.
It's the wrong one. Can you see?
No, we can see the numbers. We can see the numbers.
Okay. So these were our numbers at second interim. And you can see we were deficit spending in the 2 out years, but we were carrying enough reserve over to cover that up, and we were going to be okay, and probably we were going to end up with a little more at the end of the year to carry over and hopefully eat those, take care of those negatives. So fast forward to mid-May, and what you'll see is without changing the expenditures at all, this is what happened. So can you see the bottom of that? I don't know how to make it bigger.
We see it. It's scared.
Yeah, I can't see it. It's tiny, but if maybe you could email it, then I can look at it on my other screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine on mine, Wendy.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
So where we end up with is with a deficit next year of $2,061,000, and the second year of $3.5 million. So this is why the reduction list you have is so large, and given we're still getting a lot of information in, and the county is still just this week finished processing some of the things that are carrying through to the next year. So we're still crunching numbers, but it looks like to me, sort of, if we make these reductions, that we will squeak by in the third year. We will be carrying over a fair amount from 2021 into 21-22, and then from 21-22 into 22-23. But if we use some of the reserves that you so wisely decided to collect, I think we'll be able to squeak by in the third year. But you can see by these numbers why it's important that we do that. And I will go ahead and email this out to people. And so go ahead, Becky.
No, I was just going to say, one of the backward things about school finance is that the legislature says, okay, here's your money for the year. But in order for your budget to be approved, you, school district, have to give your county office a multi-year projection. And that multi-year projection has to be based on the conditions that you're given for that year. So as we prepare the budget to bring to you on June 25th for approval, we have to prepare the 2020-21 budget, next year's budget, based on the parameters that we're going to be given. And then we have to prepare the following year, the 21-22 budget and the 22-23 budget, the next 2 years after the current, and show you that we can pay our bills given the current conditions for the next 3 years, the year that we're moving into and 2 years after that. The reason why it's so nutty is because we have no idea what's going to happen after that. Now, what we do know is that this deferral plan that the state is launching or trying to sell is not a good plan. And I have to agree with Wendy. I would much rather the state come in and say, we are cutting you by 10% of your LCFF money. And as it comes back into the coffers, we will replenish. Because this kicking the can down the road has the potential to really hurt us. So just know that Wendy and I are looking at this budget, and what we're saying is we can't kick the can down the road. Why? Because we know the bottom has fallen out. It's not like there's some rosy condition at the end of this where people are going to say, just kidding. We know that we don't have the tax revenue right now in our state. And so for us to go into the next couple of years thinking that it's all rosy, or that the state held us harmless, or to do the strategy of hope that we hope it's all going to come back, that's not really a good place for us fiscally. And as I was trying to explain to some people about deferrals, Wendy said it beautifully. How many of us can say, no, don't pay me for 3 months. It's okay. I'll wait for my April paycheck until August. That's way okay. That's just not going to work. I was having a conversation with some of our family members, well, my family, and they were asking about our reserve. They said, well, Becky, that's why you have a reserve in a school district, right? Reserve for economic uncertainty. So just to explain that a little bit so that people understand what the reserve does and does not do, if we say our budget is 100%, we can all buy that. Let's not worry about how much the budget is, but our budget is 100% of what we have. We keep 3% of our budget for economic uncertainty because that's a mandate from the state. We have to do it. So in truth, we operate with the 97% budget. 100 minus 3 is 97, okay? Now, just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and divide that by 12. Well, it's a little above 8. Why? Because 8 times 12 is 96. So if you figure that 1 month of our budget is 8% of what we operate, okay? 8% is about what we spend every month, okay? So now let's look at that 3% reserve just a little bit more closely. If 8% is 1 month, then conceivably half a month would be 4%. Well, if half a month is 4%, and that's roughly 15 days, what the heck is 3%? Okay, so if we are believing that our reserves are going to carry us through 33% of our budget, it's not going to work. So that's one of the difficulties. When we're looking at deep referrals, and literally looking at deep referrals to the tune of 25 to 33% of our budget being deferred into the next fiscal year, that is not a good plan. And then how are we going to pay our bills? Because I love all of you very much, but I want to get paid in April, May, and June as well. So that's the difficulty. We have to look at this. So when we look at the proposals of reductions that we're showing you, it's because we really have to have an eye on the prize 2 years out, because that's what the county requires us to do. Now, someone is going to pop in and say, well, Wendy, the state's holding you harmless. It's going to be fine next year. Okay. That's all dependent on deferrals. And that's what makes us incredibly nervous. It's dependent on kicking the can down the road. So I'm going to encourage you to not kick the can down the road, because I don't know how we will crawl out of the hole. I don't want us to be in a place where we have a negative budget, where the county can't approve our spending because we don't have the money to spend. And right now, I'm really going to encourage all of us to dig deep and make the necessary reductions while they're not so severe, so that we can ride this wave. The hope and prayer is that in 2 years that it's not as bad. We have no idea what's on the horizon as far as the improvement of this, but we do know what is on the horizon as far as the current fiscal impact, and it's not good.
So Becky?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Scott. So there's been no inkling or talk about changing the normal requirements of 3-year budgets during this time. We're still expected to look into the future and produce the 3-year projections that we normally are?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, there are some districts there are probably a lot of districts that end up qualified because of year 3. What I'm hearing is that in our county, especially at least, there are a lot of districts who are able to cobble it together and figure it out for next year and maybe scrape by in the second year. But the third year, everything's just tanking. And the deferrals just make it that much worse. Plus, we have no idea what things are going to look like. I mean, for this particular tax filing season that isn't up until the middle of July, the capital gains taxes, which there is a special layer of tax on those that does help fund education. So they may be still at a fairly reasonable level, but we don't know anything about income taxes. And then we don't know what's going to happen this year. This is the year that's going to impact next year. And so with all of the people who haven't been working, all of the businesses that haven't been operating, the sales taxes are pretty much gone. Personal income taxes are going to absolutely have to take a hit. There's kind of no way around that. And sales tax and property taxes, and who knows about property taxes? The state does have the option, or I think the county actually is the one that has the option to say, yes, we will pay you what you're supposed to receive in property taxes, even though we haven't collected it yet. I don't know if that's a requirement. I think it's something that's optional for counties to do. So we have no idea if we will actually see that or not, because there are a lot of people who deferred their property taxes payments from April until who knows when. So the number of things that are up in the air is pretty unprecedented for all of us. And so I think we really need to be unbelievably careful.
So if you have, Wendy, why don't we walk through the potential reductions, and board members just know that we have the administrators in the background so that if you have a question, Anna can pull them up.
Okay. So do you want me to go through them?
I can do.
I mean, I can do it if you want. I just didn't know if you want to do it or you wanted me to.
Well, how about we do it together?
Okay.
Okay. Let me pull it up on my screen, share my screen. Okay, I'm hoping you can all see this. This is in the board packet. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Can you see this? Yes, I'm seeing head nods. Okay, so how we looked at this is we tried to make it so that everyone could understand where we were going with the budget and how we came up with the numbers. So the first column of the position and item considered for the potential reduction, and then we look at what we budgeted this item at in the 1920 year, what reduction we're recommending, and then what the savings is to the following year if you choose to do this reduction. Okay. Now, none of these are set in stone. You could all come in and start arm wrestling and say, hey, Becky and Wendy, you're nuts. We're not cutting anything. We're going to ride the wave and pretend that none of this is happening and go through life with blinders. Okay. That's your choice as a board. Wendy and I will probably both fall over, but you do have that choice. So looking at the reductions, we tried to make it so that you could see where it's coming from, how we calculated it, and then there's increases to next year that we'll talk about one at a time. The first thing we there's no particular order with this other than how we spoke with departments. So nutrition services has been something that we've been talking about for the last 4 years since I've been superintendent. This is the end of my 4th year as superintendent with you. And the reason nutrition services has come up is because of the large contribution from the general fund. When we talk about the contribution to the general fund for nutrition services, we talk about ongoing money. So when I first started 4 years ago as superintendent, the contribution to the general fund from nutrition services, I want to say was about 270,000. Does that sound about right, Wendy?
Yeah, it wasn't quite that high. It was about
250, 240.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've tried to whittle it down, and hats off to Pilar because she has pulled every magic trick out of her hat to make that happen. So by going to CEP, the Community Eligibility Program, we actually cut more out of the general fund contribution from nutrition services. So when we sat down with Pilar, we said, okay, Pilar, we got to dig deep here. How can we cut this in half? I didn't think it was reasonable. We didn't think it was reasonable to say, hey, Pilar, cut it all out. Just get rid of the $182,000. As wonderful as that would be, we just didn't know if that was reasonable, and we didn't know if we could pull it off. So Pilar said, okay, we can cut this reduction. We can make a reduction to nutrition services by 50%. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to reduce 3 staff members, and I think it came out to like 13 hours. And then we will increase the supper program. So we are crossing our fingers that those 2 things combined will increase the revenue into nutrition services and thereby decrease the general fund contribution. This has the potential, Pilar's plan has the potential to decrease the general fund contribution by more. I think this is a conservative guess right now that we can decrease that budget by 91%. Pilar, is there anything you want to add? Okay.
No.
I think we're-
I didn't know if I needed Anna to bring
No,
me in.
that's okay. That's okay. Thank you, Pilar.
Of course.
Okay. So, yes.
Sorry, quick question. So nutritional services has been working so incredibly hard during this time. Is this, and had to change, everyone had to change their ways, of course, but is this going to hinder or Pilar, I guess it's a question for you, is this going to hinder your ability to provide the amazing service that you've been able to provide because who knows what's going to be like next year?
So one of the difficulties is right now, if we look at the guidelines, and Pilar, feel free to unmute and come on back in. One of the guidelines that we're looking at is that we can't congregate. So we can't have the kids in the cafeteria if we look at the CDE guidelines for lunches and congregation. So is it going to inhibit what nutrition services can provide? Of course it is. Yes. At what level? Well, right now, there's not going to be a whole lot of cooking. We're going to have to be doing what we're doing now, which is prepare sack lunches for kids for them to take home. So we will be moving the supper program that we typically had outside of the school lunch program. One of the employees was producing the supper program by herself at the Diedrich Center. We're going to be moving that person back into a kitchen so that the supper program is then produced on the campuses. So we're shifting things around. Pilar and her team are incredibly creative, and we know they're going to pull it off. You may not see as much home cooked food because of the fact we are still going to be looking at kind of a sack lunch approach because of the congregation restriction. Pilar, did I do that fairly?
Yes, ma'am. Sounds good. I mean,
So,
obviously, it's a change, and all change is challenging. But this is what we need to do in these unprecedented times, and we'll find a way.
So the good news with the nutrition services part is that that's general fund dollars. That's dollars that will be $91,000 to next year, but it will have a compounding effect for the second year and the third year out. So that's a big chunk of change right there. So moving down the list, we have a custodian. We have 4 custodians who've indicated that they're going to retire, and we're going to not replace 1 and replace 3 at a lower rate. So that's why you see that kind of a savings for us in the budget. Moving down the line, the bus drivers. This is going to be a hot topic item. Right now, transportation is super difficult to try and wrap your head around. When you look at the guidance from CDE for transportation, they're talking about every other row, 1 kid in a seat. Okay, well, Barry Silva can tell you that we have 60 kids on that bus in the morning. So how do you go from 60 kids to 1 every other row? That takes it from 60 down to 10. And then how do we transport only 10 kids, and who are the 10 kids we're going to choose? And then how do we say we're going to fuel a bus to do the same amount of running, but with 1/6 of the children? And that's the one that I think all of our heartstrings are on the most, because transportation is the one that we're still trying to scratch our head and figure out how do we get our kids to school? Well, right now we don't know. If we're able to come back, and we'll look at those guidelines a little bit more on the June 25th meeting about a reopening plan. But if we're able to come back and we're able to bring kids on campus, full-time, part-time, sometime, transportation is going to be incredibly tricky. So right now what we are suggesting is that we take the general fund contribution, which for Bragg Unified, we get a state base level grant for transportation. The state says, here's this money, use it for transportation. We pay $155,000 annually beyond that base grant.
More than that.
Oh, more than that. So
almost 300,000.
So what we're proposing is that we reduce the general fund contribution to transportation down by $155,000. It's the cost of 3 drivers. Grounds. We have a groundskeeper who has submitted his intent to retire, and our intention right now is to crawl through next year and not replace that position. That's why there is a cost savings, and you're probably thinking, well, how come the savings is less? Because we had an early retirement incentive that was attached to that. So we don't glean the full savings because there's a bonus and there's the insurance. Does that make sense? Then we look at the aides. This is not going to make me look good. I had no idea that we had over 70 instructional aides in our district. I look at the positions as far as what we need and what we need in our classrooms, and I've never taken the time to count. When we look at returning in the fall and we look at either remote learning or everybody coming back or some modification, the question becomes, do we need all of those positions fully loaded? And right now we are saying no. So we had open aid positions, and we are suspending the open positions. And then we went through all of the aides by classification as outlined in the bargaining agreement. And we reduced based on what we believe our need will be. So that's 1 bilingual aid, that's 4 instructional aides for the severely handicapped classrooms, that's 2 instructional aides for special ed classrooms, that's 3 instructional aides for classroom positions. The new 6 instructional aid positions that we had slated in the budget for the 3 new special ed teachers that we had to hire, we've suspended those positions. So you can see from this right here, sorry, I had a reload problem. Let me get this back up. Okay. You could see from right here that this is a substantial amount of money just in classified aids, recognizing that 6 of these positions we just haven't filled. Moving forward, the mechanic. So if right now we have a reduced routes with our buses, the hope is that we aren't going to need a mechanic full-time because we won't have our buses going full-time. So a reduction to the mechanic to 20%. And when we say 20%, we're talking about working 20% of the school year, 20% of the days, so that we can contract that out. This right here was an eye-opener for many people, and that's our substitute budget. We are going to do one of these. I am crossing my fingers, and I'm using a horrible strategy right now that we call hope. We had $352,000 in general fund money for substitute costs, meaning for when a principal's out, when a teacher's out, when an aide is out, when a kitchen worker, bus driver, custodian, whomever, when someone is out, we rely on our substitute budget to bring someone in. We are going to slash those two budgets by 75%. And we are going to hope that we are going to be able to move people around, that if someone calls in sick, that we can cover the class. That is a huge piece of ongoing money that has great implications in the second and third year out if we can pull it off. If we can't pull it off, then when we come to you at the first interim, we may need to renegotiate the budget a little bit. But again, horrible strategy of hope. But for right now, this savings to the district of $260,000 is roughly 4 teachers, 4 teaching positions. Or if you look up above, this $260,000 is how many aide positions? 11. So that's why we're doing it. Yes, Diana.
So is this substitute cost just for ill staff, or is this for trainings? Because I know sometimes the training comes with, that training money pays for substitute.
Great question. It's not everybody calling in sick or going to Hawaii for a couple of days. It's not that. This is a combination of training and illness and personal necessity, PTO. So it's not, I don't want to paint our employees as being irresponsible, because that's not the case. This is a whole myriad of things. But as you go deeper into the budget, you'll see why we believe we can cut from there. Because later in the budget, we're going to talk about PD here in a second. The alternative education secretary, we're going to maintain that person at 60%. We moved over the reduction, that employee is becoming a teacher for the following year. So we're maintaining the reduction and keeping it at 60% position. These positions right here, the teacher on special assignment at Redwood and the intervention teacher at Redwood, and the teacher on special assignment at Dana Gray and the intervention teacher at Dana Gray. What we are doing right now is we are going to reduce those all by 50%, and they can, the plan at Redwood is that the instructional coach and the intervention teacher are going to be sharing like an independent study remote learning kind of classroom. And then Dana Gray is going to figure out that plan for them, what they're going to do. Now you're probably saying, how come we're saving money at Redwood, but we're not saving money at Dana Gray? Well, we're saving money at Redwood because we've literally reduced that position. At Dana Gray, the staff who were in that position are filling an additional FTE somewhere else. So it's kind of a shift. So because it's a shift, you're not really seeing a savings. Does that make sense? And originally we had it out of here completely. And in speaking with some folks, they said, hey, can you put that in so that it's transparent, so that people see that Dana Gray is getting the hit just like Redwood, even though there's not the clear savings because we're not reducing by staff. So those reductions are in place. Everyone, just a shout out to Julie Castillo. She has probably touched more lives in this district than probably any teacher, to be quite honest with you, because she's hit every single kid in Redwood and Dana Gray for 2 decades. I mean, how much time? And she has submitted her intent to retire. I had spoken to her earlier in the year and just said, hey, in this environment, I don't know how we're going to be able to keep the garden going. And so this is the reduction of that position We're reducing by one kindergarten position because the numbers just simply aren't coming in. Right now, we have 66 students enrolled in kindergarten. If the TK numbers are added to that, it just brings us up to 86. And Lundy, if you're there, I don't know if you know of any current numbers, but I think we're right around 86. If we count TK, feel free to unmute and say yay or nay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So we're concerned about kindergarten. I'm a little concerned that parents are going to send their kids in this COVID environment to kindergarten. I can honestly say when I was a first-time mama with my Mitchell and sending him to school kindergarten year, I was a little nervous about a lot of things. And it's so funny because that was the year that kindergarten went from a half day to a full day. And I remember having all this trepidation, like, oh my God, my 5-year-old's going to go to kindergarten for the whole day. And I was really worried about it. And then I try and go back to, 14 years ago when I was putting Mitchell in kindergarten. And how would I be if we were walking into this? And I was worried about going to a full day. So we don't know what's going to happen with kindergarten, but we're anticipating at this point that we are going to be reducing by one teacher. That could change. So that is a very soft reduction. Please know that. Okay, moving on with the reductions. We had a teacher, LOA as leave of absence, a teacher who requested a leave of absence at the high school. We are not filling that position. We're going to eliminate some support classes, do them differently there so that we can still keep the sections and still keep the class sizes at the contract limits. PE is a really funky place right now. If we are to look at the guidelines, locker rooms are kind of off limits right now. We should be getting new guidelines on Friday on how gyms, health clubs, pools are going to be able to reopen in this next stage. It still concerns us on what the requirements are going to be for our own locker rooms. And right now, what we are being told through our county officials and through talking with our state connections, like when I sit on the AXA meetings, there's not much hope for locker rooms right now. So if that's the case, then having one PE teacher at the high school and one PE teacher at the middle school makes the most sense. So again, it's a soft reduction. We aren't laying anybody off, but we can move people around. So this shows a reduction of one PE teacher, the two current PE teachers at the middle school. The reason you're not seeing a savings there is because we're moving them into open positions. So they're still there. And you're not going to see a reduction from that budget. And also, we are talking about looking at potentially at the middle school doing 6th grade to be a self-contained class. Our kiddos are coming to us from Dana Gray. If we aren't able to come back full-time with everybody moving around, how do we help those kiddos learn to navigate a middle school environment, moving from class to class, if we don't have the ability to really work with them? So the idea is to potentially start the year off in a self-contained model. But in doing that, it means that we have to add a 6th grade teacher. We have a teacher who's returning from a leave of absence. So we've placed her in that position. And that's why there's no cost savings to that middle school movement. The construction teacher at the high school has tendered his resignation. Great guy. He did a wonderful job. We are going to suspend that position right now because in this COVID environment, we're not sure how many days a week we're going to be able to bring kids back. We don't know what that's going to look like as far as the classroom environment. We don't want to destroy that program and get someone in there who doesn't want to be in there. So we're just going to suspend it for 1 year and bring it back when we can bring kids back, when we know that we're going to have a full-time program. The counseling position, right now, we have a counselor at every site, 2 at the high school. The idea behind this reduction right now is that this person moves back into the classroom so that we're not hiring. That's why you don't see a huge savings here. You only see a $16,000 savings because that's filling a position that would have been reduced. Well, hold on, let me say it this way. We had 6, Mr. Kale, you're going to have to help me. Do we have 7 3rd grade teachers currently? I think we have 7 3rd grade teachers and we're reducing it down to 6. Does that sound right, Mr. Kale?
We have 6. We're reducing it down to 5.
Thank you. Okay. So in reducing it down to 5, people are getting shuffled around, and then we put one of the counselors back into the classroom so we wouldn't have to hire. So that's why that savings is not the full scope of savings by reducing for one. This is what I was talking about with the substitute budget. This right here is that a moratorium on all district travel and conference. It means that you as a board, we're not going to CSBA in December. We are not going to go to any conferences for 1 year. We're going to just put a halt on it. I'm not going to go anywhere. We are only going to go to conferences and trainings that allow us to go virtually, or that are paid for by some outside source. So holding on to that budget right there, it saves us $100,000. We did keep a little bit of it in there because if there's something that's coming down the pike and we have to attend, we don't want to have to rob from one budget to get this covered. At this point, though, unless it's the difference of life and death, I don't see us doing any kind of travel or conference for the next year. School discretionary budgets. I know I'm going quickly. Did someone have a question? No? School discretionary budgets, this is the amount of money that we give our principals every year to run their schools. We're asking for a 15% reduction. The sub-caller position, we're going to move that work. It's a Secretary 2 position. We're going to move it to the existing Secretary 2s at each of the sites. The athletics budget, we anticipate at this point that the fall sporting season is probably going to be placed on hold, which is why we're only reducing that budget by 50%. The hope and prayers that we are going to be able to fly come winter and spring. The athletic director stipend is a direct reflection on that of the athletics reduction. If we are reducing the athletic season by 50%, we're going to reduce that stipend by 50%. These next stipends are about band and choir. The band director stipend, the choir director stipend, the musical stipend, orchestra stipend, drama coach, all those stipends are predicated on performances. If we don't have performances, then we don't have the job description to match the stipend. So we're looking at small reductions in these, but full reductions in the musical and drama. The EL district coordinator stipend, we have a stipend right now for a teacher to be the district-wide EL coordinator. You're going to see on the next page that we're looking at a position through migrant ed funds, and then the movement of the intervention TOSA to have a district-wide EL coordinator. So that would eliminate that stipend. So all of that together comes up to a little over $2 million in reductions. How deep is that felt in our school system amid this COVID landscape? It's deep. However, if we can hold on to that $2 million and push it into the following year, then we are not kicking the can down the road. There are things that we had to increase for next year. There's no way around it. If we are not going to have the gardener, we can't let our gardens go, we can't let them die. And with a grounds reduction, with reducing the groundskeepers by 1, we still have to keep the gardens going. Right now, our gardener works 35 hours a week. We are proposing that we increase the gardener for the gardens to 40 hours a week to keep the gardens going. So that's why you see the $16,000 increase here. It's not just hours, it's the increase that it would be into retirement and employer-related costs. This is the district-wide EL coordinator. It's not something that we had in the budget for this year, but with our Migrant Ed new MOU, we are getting a little bit more money from Migrant Ed. So we're hoping that and then the shift in staffing is going to have a cost neutral effect on that, but the district-wide effects will be much stronger. We had to hire 3 new special ed teachers for next year. Our caseloads are over. Our special ed teachers are drowning. And if we are going to maintain and honor our contract language, then we have to hire 3 new teachers, which we've done. So we're excited about that. The 3 new special ed teachers we've brought in are actually all homegrown. So we are doing a little jazz hand happy dance right there, that they're going to be with us. I take it back. We have 1 from outside the area who's coming in. So we're going to do a happy dance for her too and hope that she stays. But that's a significant increase. It's a $207,000 hit to the budget that we have no control over. We have to do it. And then the BITSA support providers, those are the mentorships for our new teachers. We just bargained with FBDTA to increase that stipend from $1,200 to $3,500 per teacher. And that number was not just pulled out of a hat. We did it because for our peer assistants, that's the stipend we give for peer assistants. So it didn't make sense to have two different levels of stipend. If you're a peer assistance mentor, you get $3,500. But if you are a BITSA mentor, a beginning teacher mentor, you only get $1,250. Well, that doesn't make sense. It's the equal work. So we increased that to $3,500 as well. But in doing that, that's an increased cost to the district. When it comes down to it, the summary is that we have total proposed reductions of a little over $2 million. We know that we have increases of about $250,000, and that is a savings of 1.7, almost $1.8 million, if we can maintain it. The real test with this is that if we go forward with this, and you say, okay, well, let's do it. There are still things that there are unexpected costs that are going to come up. We still don't know what the governor's final budget is going to be, and final is a tricky word. We don't know what the governor's budget will be come June 15th. We're still waiting on that. We have to prepare a budget for you that is approved and passed by June 30th, which is what we're going to give you on June 25th. Then on July 15th, when all the taxes come due, and then the state gets a true picture of what's happened, then in August, they have the ability again to revise the budget. So we are nowhere done with this. We could be looking at some changes in August, right when Wendy is preparing first interim. So know that we are looking at this from the lens of how do we prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and how do we keep Fort Bragg Unified fiscally solvent? Questions?
So what's the plan with the counselor reducing down when folks are concerned about students' well-being? Are they going to be sharing sites, or how is that going to be mitigated?
So we've talked about that. We're going to have a counselor meeting closer in, I want to say, okay, someone from the admin team help me. When's our first counselor meeting? I want to say it's, I want to say before the end of the month, we're having another counselor meeting to talk about that. We came together as a group to discuss how things could be shared, how we could move things around so that the kiddos at Dana Gray specifically could be covered. We will have a plan by the time school starts. We have a very cursory plan right now, which is questionable at best, but we are looking at it on how we could make sure that we have those kiddos covered. So we're not ignoring it. And again, the goal right now is to limp through next year as much as possible. And when we get our footing back, to restore that position completely.
And regarding transportation, one thing that we should mention is we will still be providing the mandatory transportation for our special ed students.
So
go ahead.
The ACES grant, did you say that was going to be reduced? But there's no savings here, or reductions, I should say.
We have no idea. We're still trying to find out what kind of flexibility we're going to have with that program, whether we can defer it for a year, because they haven't even given us any guidance about what that might look like as far as maintaining an after school program with a minimal number of kids social distancing. So we have phone calls and emails out to everybody we can think of to try to get some kind of an answer for that. It looks like the funding is going to be reduced by about between 15 and 20%. So we would also have to figure out how could we operate the program on the reduced money.
So I had a meeting today with the superintendents, and Bessie Glossinger was part of that meeting to talk about specifically the ACES grant and the after school program. First off, assets is different. Assets is federal. So the assets right now, we have not heard about any impact to assets. So know that. That's the high school program. The K-8 program is through the ACES grant, through the after school funding. So right now, from my meeting with Bessie today, they have trailer bill language that's requesting flexibility of time, requesting flexibility of numbers, requesting flexibility of ratios. If that trailer bill language is accepted, then we will be able to use the ACES money to actually provide enrichment during potentially the school day if we don't have all the kids coming at once. So it is a big wild card right now. Bessie is meeting with, is it William Funk? Does that name sound familiar?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
They are meeting on Monday to get a more comprehensive lay of the land. Thank you, Beth Pine. She has been involved in countless meetings regarding the ACES grant. She really has her fingers on the pulse. I spoke with Beth this morning, and we talked about what we're going to do at this point is we're just waiting to see what the guidelines are. The reality is that our day program right now is taking priority over the after school program. We can make this commitment to you. We will be spending $0 from the general fund budget on any after school. We have been really good about living within our means of that grant, and we're not going to go backwards now. So whatever hit the after school program is taking financially, that program will be cut. So will be cut proportionately to address the loss of funding. We will not be using any general fund dollars to subsidize that. Okay, and I shouldn't say it like this. Let me back up. It is your choice. You are the board. If you decide you want to use general fund dollars to do that, you tell me what to do, and Wendy and I get to go do it. I'm going to recommend to you that we don't use any general fund dollars to subsidize that program. So I apologize. I'm getting too big for my britches.
And everything we're talking about here are things that we're proposing to include in the budget that you'll be getting next week, hopefully.
So the hard part with this is that this really is an exercise of preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. What I will tell you, different from many, 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 many years, is that we know this is coming. This is not an if. We know that the bottom has fallen out. I'm kind of holding my breath to see what July and August are going to bring, because I don't believe that the deferral is a good plan. I don't believe that puts us in a place to be fiscally sound. And then when July and August come, if the budget coffers turn out to be much more grim than what is anticipated, then you can be guaranteed there's going to be some kind of adjustment in August. So we know that the spending has stopped because of COVID. We watched it in our own town. People are just kind of coming back to life now. But we are going to need to address the budget shortcomings that we know will happen.
So I have a couple questions. In that Word document, Wendy, that you showed with the, it had the 3 years.
Yeah, I emailed it to all of you.
Okay. So when you did the May numbers, does that really reflect any cost savings that we had for not having kids, like, electricity, gas for the buses?
No. I hadn't worked any of that in. I just wanted to show you from where we were in March, where we were 6 weeks later. That the reduction in revenues made that big an impact on our bottom line. And so I haven't worked any of that in. I'm starting to do that now, and it looks like and that's why I'm feeling a little more comfortable that we're going to be able to scrape by in year 3. The bottom line on next year looks pretty good, and gives us enough to carry over to be able to feel like we can break even in the third year.
And then my follow-up question is, some of those things on that list, let's say I'm an optimist, and let's say at the semester, school's going to open back to regular, come December. So let's say about half, I didn't really go through the list and look at it, but half of those things have to be reinstated. AIDS, buses, things like, or not have to be, potentially should be. How do we, I think
by the time we do, so first interim is as of October 31st. And I think at that point, we'll have a pretty good idea of how how deep things are going to go and how long. Because if things start to open up all over the place and we aren't seeing big surges and having things shut down again, I think we'll be able to, comfortably look at a slow return to a normal economy. It's not going to be right away. Like I said, it's looking more like an L than a U or a V, but it's, I think we'll have a pretty good idea about whether or not there's a resurgence. If there is one and we end up with these, shutting down, opening up, that's going to wreak havoc with everything and create more uncertainty. But hopefully we'll have a better idea. We'll have a better economic forecast of what we'll have a few months of a trend to see how quickly the economy is coming back, how quickly jobs are being restored, how many businesses are actually going to be able to survive this and open up again. So locally and nationally. So I'm very hopeful by then that we'll have a reasonable idea. It will mean a lot of budget adjustments then, and that's when we can talk about, okay, yeah, it's looking like they are going to let us open up again, so let's plan to, in the second semester, bring everybody back on the buses. I think it would probably still be a good idea because it is, I really believe it's going to be a slow economic recovery, that we should be careful about what we restore and have it, look at the things we really need to do first, like busing kids, to make sure they get to school. And look at the other things and say, okay, how much of this is, it's back to my, mandatory, necessary, desirable list. What do we got to have, and then what should we have, and then what would we like to have, I think is how we'll have to look at it.
And the other part to this, Kathy, is if the economy is opening back up and we can bring kids back full time, that's a twofold effect. The economy will start to come back. That's money in the coffers to the state. If we make these kind of deep reductions now and we have to go back and say, okay, we need to restore this, because we made the reductions deep in the beginning, it will help us get to the next step. So in my mind, as much as possible, how much can we reduce so that we can just hold that budget back for us to have some wiggle room and flexibility as we go into an unknown year?
Well, my reason for asking that is almost to be more conservative, because that shoot up of costs that may, I'm not proposing to add more to your list, but I'm just even more conservative or cautious, thinking that, again, if in December, when the semester, or January, after the new semester goes, some of those costs would spike, which could even put us back into where. Am I making sense?
Oh yeah, and I have to tell you, we've got a couple of wild cards on here. Make no mistake, part of this is about trying to get us to a balanced budget that's going to get approved by the county. But there's a whole lot of wild cards in here that may or may not happen. The sub budget, that's a huge risk. That is a huge risk. Wendy and I went back and forth about it, because it's a huge risk. We are basing that budgetary decision on hope. It's a huge risk. But what's the alternative? Do we want to lay off another 10 classified positions? Because right now, if there are no, if the legislature doesn't have a reduction in COLA, then there is no ed code trigger for us to do certificated layoffs. That time has passed. That was March 15th. So if we go into August 19th with opening school, and we say we're not going to do the hope strategy on the substitute budget, that's the only place we can reduce by is classified. So I will tell you, I don't want to reduce classified anymore. And Wendy and I, like I said, went back and forth, and I'm going to rely on hope. Horrible strategy. Okay, horrible. What's the alternative? So I'm with you. If you have things that you want to talk about potentially reducing and digging a little bit deeper, let's talk about it. The hard part is that we have looked at almost every nook and cranny and then talked about what we can get away with. Does the cost savings outweigh the consequences?
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, let's talk about the district office, right? We cut the district office down to the bare bones my first year, my second year here. Okay, so if we cut any further, you are going to see things not getting done, and things are already not getting done because we haven't restored. People have said, well, Becky, you just cut the fat, just start cutting administrators. Well, we did that. We eliminated Joanne Farrell's position. Okay. And to this day, both Carolyn Creedy and I are still paying for it. So those are the difficulty. What else can you cut that doesn't bring about consequences that are too hard to recover? So we're doing the best that we can. I know this is hard on so many people. I wish that we were not an ADA-driven district, but we are. The good news is, because we had a lot of open positions, because we had some positions that we just hired, we were able to rescind positions so that we wouldn't have to dig as deep. When you look at the budget reduction proposal that we've given you, there's a lot of open stuff there that doesn't have a person behind it. And that's the hard part about being a small district. It's not just a position number. There is a person who we've raised our children with. There is a person who's a former Fort Bragg High School graduate. So what I'm hopeful for is that if we do this, at least this deep for right now, we will be able to re-examine this budget again at first interim in October, and we'll let you know if the strategy of hope is working. And if it's not, then we might have to dig a little bit deeper. And as things become vacated, as positions become vacant, we may have to say we're not going to rehire for that.
Okay. Anna, do we have anything from the public?
No, we do not.
Okay. Well, I'll ask the public, if you do have anything to send in, you can, it's board meeting, right, at Gmail? Okay. And it's on the agenda if you're looking at that.
Board meeting at fbusd.us.
Okay. So if you do have any comments to send in, we can read those and get them questions answered or comments read. Board, do you have any other questions or opinions or concerns?
I have. Can you remind me what we're 3% and above? How much of above are we? 3% for the reserve, approximately.
Well, so there's the reserve for economic uncertainty that we're required to keep. That's 3%, and we have not heard about any flexibility on that for a little while. During the really bad down times, they let us go to 2%. So, but that's kind of an untouchable amount. The board reserve is currently at around, I want to say 2.5%. We're getting close to that 3%, but we're not quite there. If we can hobble by without pulling it out, I'd love to, but it's looking right now like we will probably need to at least say we're willing to use some of it in the third year to keep from going too far into the hole. But as much as possible, I'm going to try to not do that. But it's there if we need to fall back on it.
Let me just say that none of this is easy. We did not go into this year thinking that we would be landing here. This has been beyond strange to me. I keep asking myself, why didn't I go be a school psychologist or a speech therapist? Because they get to work with kids. And not that they have easy jobs, they have horribly difficult jobs. But I have questioned being an administrator during these times because it's hard. We are going to weather this storm together. We absolutely know that this is not a forever deal. This is a right now deal. And right now we have to make some tough decisions. And I want to just say, number one, that our staff has been incredibly admirable admirable getting through the last 12 weeks. It hasn't been easy for anyone. You go from going to work every day to being at home, juggling your kids and their learning and your job and everything else that comes at you. What we are proposing right now is to try and get us to limp through next year. That's really what this is about. It's not about getting ahead. It's about limping through a year so that we don't fall off the cliff.
Well, I just want to say thank you for doing all that. I can't even imagine. It was really a difficult job, and it's not fun for anybody. We all hate it. But I do appreciate everything you guys have done. It took a lot.
We're doing our best, and we're trying to make sure that we don't, that anything that we propose is with reason.
So Becky, could you take a minute to explain to the public how that list came about, that it was the leadership,
Sure. So
Thank you.
Anytime we start looking at reductions, the first thing that we do is we start with the administrative council. It's not something that we bring to our full leadership teams, because you can't ask people to look at the global perspective of your school and your site and then start pointing fingers at each other. What's wonderful about our administrative team is that everybody gets that we all have to contribute something to the pie. And years ago, when I was a principal, it was a horrible, horrible process. It was almost like we were arm wrestling with each other and eating each other's young to try and save our own program. And I will tell you, with this administrative team that we have right now, no one's doing that. Everybody is looking at each other square in the eye and say, okay, if I have to sacrifice, I'm going to sacrifice for all of us. And here's what we can give up for 1 year. Here's what we can give up for 2 years. And that's really how the process began. When we had someone with a leave of absence and it was an open position, the first question we said is, can you get through without filling that position? Because then it doesn't impact a person. So those were some of the first questions, which is why you see so many positions on there for certificated, because there were people who vacated them. And if we don't have to fill them, then it stops us from giving a layoff notice. So the process started with the administrative council team, with us looking at all the programs globally and then asking ourselves, what can we say we can just stop for a year or two? And then looking at what we do because of COVID. If we aren't going to have kids full-time on campus, if we are going to have kids full-time on campus, what does that mean? If we have COVID restrictions, what does that mean for staffing, and what can we put on hold for a little bit? So that's how this all started. It was, what can we put on hold? What is open that we can live without so that we don't have to impact a human being with a layoff notice? So that's how the process began. And then we just started chipping away at it slowly, slowly, slowly. So I want to say we've been working on this for a good 3-4 weeks, would you say? Like once May happened, I think we all started just putting our hands on our forehead saying, okay, well, how are we going to do this? It has not been easy because everybody has to give up something. And then we go through and say, okay, can you live without this? How much can you live without this? But there's a lot of sacrificing going on at all of our sites. No one is immune, not Alt Ed, not Redwood, not Dana Gray, middle school, high school. Everybody's taking a hit somewhere. So that's how this happened. And the reason why we wanted to produce the list in this manner is so that you could see exactly where the savings are. So that you could see what the previous budget was, what the new budget is, and how we came to these numbers. Is that what you wanted? The process?
Yes. Thank you, Becky. I just wanted the public to know that it wasn't you and you sitting in an office somewhere making a list.
Okay.
So
no.
Thank you.
No, misery enjoys company. Let's remember that.
Okay, so let me ask, we have lots of site people on tonight, so thank you very much for giving up your evening for us. Is there any comments or questions, concerns, the things you wanted to point out while you're here?
They're all muted, so no news is good news.
Raise a hand or unmute yourself. Or.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your patience. And thank you for helping in this process.
And thank you for being the leaders at your sites. I know that when we had the reports last month, everybody was very complimentary of their leadership at their site. So thank you for putting that extra time and that personal touch that everybody needs right now. Okay, so I'll go back to the board. Do you have any questions, comments? We are eventually going to need to give some guidance here to the team. So anything you want to clarify or discuss, now is the time.
So any of the other grants that we have, the CTE and the tobacco grant, those are all kind of on hold as well. And I don't think any general funds would have been used for those anyway. So that's not really an issue with this list.
The CTIG money is right now on the May revise scheduled for a slight reduction, but I don't have any details on that yet. So, but we'll have some carryover there anyway. So I think we'll be able to muddle through all right. It might mean everybody has to be a little bit more careful about what they're purchasing in supplies and the like. But we, again, we learned our lesson very well about not spending one-time money on anything that eats. So we've not used any of that for personnel. So those will just be, like I said, reductions in spending on supplies and materials and professional development and that sort of thing.
And is that the same for the ag incentive grant? I knew that was on the chopping block at one point.
That was also slated for a reduction again. We don't know exactly how much. So we're kind of in a holding pattern on that. And that's a match. I can't imagine it dropping a lot below where it is because it already took a little bit of a hit this year. So I'm not overly concerned about where that's going. And again, it might mean tightening up a little bit, maybe using a little more CTIG money to help with those supplies and things rather than the ag incentive money. But we'll figure it out.
But it's nothing we would have to backfill or cover.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
A little bit, but we're not talking about big dollars there as far as our match to it. So I'm not overly concerned about having to backfill some of that because, like I said, we have some CTIG money that we'll be carrying over, so we'll be able to backfill those kinds of things certainly for a year, and hopefully we'll have a better idea of what it's going to look like after that.
And will there be Perkins money also this year?
As far as we know, haven't heard anything because that's federal. The feds have not given us any indication that they're going to do any kind of a slash and burn on any of these things yet. Again, that'll be the September-October message because that's when the federal government puts their budget together, but that'll be usually for the following year. So we've not heard anything about reductions to federal programs at this point.
Thank you.
There's a lot of expenses that we have too with students going places and doing things, and right now in COVID land, some of that is going to be placed on hold. So I think about how Megan uses the Ag Incentive Grant to get her kids to conference, to get her kids to the competitions and all those things. Those might become virtual. We're not sure. The good news is that if all that comes back and gets restored, like Wendy said, we do have some CTIP money that we could use to help with that.
So I just want to confirm that none of this has anything to do with salaries, benefits. Seems like any programs that will be allowed during this COVID reopening, there'll be funding for culinary, wood, art, music, all those things that during budget times everyone thinks, oh, all these things are being cut. I don't see anything in here that really minimizes or diminishes a student's educational experience except for things caused by the reopening due to COVID. Is that a fair assumption?
Kinda. Okay. So let me tell you why kinda. Because band and choir, both our band and choir teacher are fully employed for next year. But we have had to have conversations about what they're going to teach because in COVID land, how do you blow through a trombone and then open up the little end to let the spit out? Okay. And I'm not saying that. Nathan Waletzko, I apologize. I don't know how to say it any more than that. If you have kids sucking on a reed for a saxophone or a clarinet, you know, how do you have that kind of a class in this COVID environment? That's super hard. And then let us not forget what happened in Redwood Valley at the Assembly of God Church. They were singing, right? That singing from the choir, what is being told to us is that when you sing, the droplets loft longer and go further, right? So poor Jenny Windsor, our fabulous choir teacher, she said, Becky, I have a whole file to defend why you need to keep me hired. I have a whole file on how I help the core, how we help SEL, how we help all these things. She said, I got nothing for you right now. And bless her soul. So with both the band and the choir teacher right now, what we're doing is we're looking at different electives that they can do so that they can still touch the lives of children. And then we're also looking at a way for them to hold a virtual class, meaning that Jenny can still do singing with kids virtually, but it's not going to be during the day in the same room where the air particles could loft. And looking at a way that our wonderful band teacher can still work with kids on instrumentation and not have to worry about what's coming out of a horn. So we're looking at some different things. We're going to be looking for donations for a guitar class for Mr. Waletzko. We are going to be looking for drama material for Ms. Windsor. They're both being really creative, and they are both 100% putting their best foot forward to try and do something creative during this time of a pandemic, so that what they do in the classroom doesn't cause alarm or any fear of a potential spread. So, Scott, when you say I'm not seeing any cuts from this, that's why I say kinda.
Okay.
Because we did have a very intense conversation with band and choir. They were wonderful, as they always are, taking one for the team. They want to be there for kids. They want to do the right thing to keep the programs going. So that's what we're looking at. You may not see an instrumental music class like we've seen before on campus. You might see a guitar class because guitar doesn't require any exchange of air, right? And the kids can keep their own guitar, play their guitar, and we don't have droplets being exchanged. We can do drama because they can do drama masked up. So there are different things that we're looking at so that kids still get experiences. And then when the green light comes back, then we will bring those programs back full steam.
Okay, I just want to point out that in this crazy challenge of trying to save $2 million in a budget, we're not seeing anything that has to do with cutting salaries or freezing steps or cutting benefits. And I think that is an amazing accomplishment on the administration's end, and it needs to be acknowledged, in my opinion.
Thank you. We recognize we live in a small town, and every single one of us, when we start looking at the budget, we always remind each other, position, not people, position, not people. But what do? We're human. These are people that we've raised our children together. These are people who, they were students of mine, students of Kathy, Mary.
Well, when you have people in leadership positions in an organization like this that are from the town, this is the kind of creative cost savings you come up with. When you have, people that may be in leadership positions that didn't, grow up with these people. It is positions and not so much people. And so I am grateful that we don't have to make those decisions tonight. We may have to make them in the future. And that you've really taken that into consideration when looking at where we have to cut. Because not every organization that's in this situation is going to be so lucky.
And we are going to make some difficult reductions tonight. But when we get to those pieces, I will give you my 60-second spiel of holding on. So thank you, Scott, for that. We appreciate it. Any more questions for us? Any more questions for admin before they log off?
So what happens with this list from here? Is it?
So I'll be working these things into the budget that you'll be hopefully approving on the 25th.
Great. Thank you.
Unless
So as a group, right. So as a group, we need, I mean, we're not taking action on this list, but we need to give Wendy and Becky our, stamp of approval. Right. Are we okay with this list? Is there anything we need to talk about in pool? They need to know if we're going to support this budget, because we don't want to come on the 25th and have Wendy have done all this work and somebody say, just kidding, we're not going to pull
athletics, or we're not
right,
going to,
or the aid
sub budget
positions,
or whatever.
So we need to have that discussion to give them the guidance they need to prepare for that meeting. Correct? Am I
Yes.
right?
So
Okay.
Thank you for that, Kathy, because it kind of gives me a little more insight as to what's expected. So a couple things on the list do concern me. The transportation, cutting that much and only allowing transportation for special ed. I know that in this new COVID world, we may not be able to do transportation more than the limited, but not having the ability at all next year to help bring kids to school should this COVID world go away in January or whenever it might, when there's a vaccine, who knows? But just not having that budget at all to increase transportation. Same thing with the athletic program is a little concerning. And these are just things that I think, that I kind of cringe at a little bit. I'm not saying that they wouldn't be supported in the budget, but it's a lot of this stuff seems like things that not naturally, but make sense to cut. A couple of the other things to me, it's a little concerning. Should sports be allowed in whatever capacity, it'd be great if we had the budget to support that.
That's why we're only cutting 50%.
Okay. But everything else, it's a hard list, but for me, I don't really see, and I'm just looking at it here real quick. I don't see any huge red flags that, the counselor, that's another little concern but that for me, those are the two areas.
I just have one question, and I'm sure there's a plan. And maybe that's coming on the 24th, but I'm sure somebody out there is asking, we have to clean the school between every set of kids. How can we do that without replacing the custodian? So if you could just comment on the kind of generally the plan of how that could get covered, please.
So in the job description of the groundskeepers and the existing transportation workers, there is, at least to the groundskeepers, that a light custodial work is part of it. In the custodial realm, they have light grounds work that's part of their job description. So we went over the job description with the CSEA reps. So what we're looking at is on the deep clean days that we have electrostatic sprayers that we've just purchased, and that's going to help with the timing of it. So that's one thing. The second thing is that if we are not having all the children on campus at the same time, the cleaning, while still needs to be done, it's not going to be as intense as it would with 130 kids on campus versus 410 kids on campus. So that's what we're looking at. We also recognize that we are going into this and we're going to give it a good old home team try. We may have to share custodians from site to site. We have a group of custodians, and we've been fortunate to be able to keep custodians pure in their positions and at their schools. And that's probably not going to be the case next year. We are probably going to have to do some sharing where we may be moving people and at different times of the day in order to make sure that we get all of it cleaned and done.
And that's also why we're only not replacing one of the 4 that have put in for retirement, recognizing we still need to keep the schools clean.
And also a shift in hours. Our custodians have been starting at 5:30 in the morning, and we're talking about, okay, well, maybe we shift those hours a little bit so they start at 7 or 7:30 so that we have more after hours instead of before hours. so that they can be there with a stronger team, so that there are more folks doing that concentrated work. We are working out the details right now. Barry Silva, Wendy, and I had a brief conversation today, and we said, okay, here are some things that we can look at. We have time to think about it, so let's think about it and get through the summer, and we will have a solid plan before the kiddos come. The other part of this is that we fully recognize that between now and when the kiddos come on August 19th, plans could drastically change over the next 10 weeks. So when Barry looked at me today and said, hey, we've got some time. Let's just get through the summer. Let's get our list done, and we will have a solid plan before the kiddos come. We really do have time on this one, so we're not too worried about it.
And there's, we've had an approximate, number for 3 weeks, and, add to the change in the budget numbers and the change in the requirements and the changes in the guidance and everything else. We're going to be scrambling. We're going to be scrambling probably till October. Things are going to change. Things are going to shift. We're trying to come up with the best plan we can with the information we have, which is not perfect, but it's going to be a moving target, and we know that. We just have to accept that it's going to be a moving target and kind of roll with it.
And that's the hard part, because I have to tell you, if we are going to make any wagers, I would make the wager that when we get to August, this state budget is going to shift again. Especially if deferral plan goes through. Again, I just want on the record, bad idea. You don't create your own household budget by deferrals. I mean, someone go tell your mortgage company, I'm going to pay you in September that April payment. You're okay with that, right? So it's just hard. And folks are doing a large happy dance that this is a big win in the legislature with the deferrals. It scares me to death. And I don't believe for 1 second that whatever gets told to us next week is going to be the same story that we receive on August 15th. I think we're going to see a shift again, because once the tax dollars get totaled up in July, good, bad, or ugly, that is going to have an impact on us in August, which will have the trickle-down effect that we are going to have to make mad dash reductions or adjustments when we get to first interim.
I have the same concerns as Scott and Kathy. There's a couple line items that I don't like. No one likes them. But there's enough concern with the reduction of revenues with the state. I mean, the state's told businesses they don't have to pay the sales tax for the first 2 quarters. That's scary. How if they can't come up with the sales tax now, how are they going to come up with it, in quarter 3? And same with all the folks that are on unemployment. There's not going to be as much income tax coming in, and with the delay and with the COVID, what's fall going to look like with the illness? I think, unfortunately, we have to be fiscally responsible and stick to a plan that's similar to this, so that we don't have, we have no programs unraveling right now for the most part, for the fall, for school. So that's a positive. And I just think that we have to be responsible so that we don't have to have dismantling of programs and staff.
And this is not anyone's first choice. Please hear me. We didn't do a high five with each other because we were so excited that we got rid of $2 million. I mean, I have to tell you, there's been a knot in the pit of my stomach for the last month, having to come to this meeting and have to talk about this. I have to tell you, the only bright spot was when we moved the June 8th special board meeting to today, because it just prolonged the agony. Because I couldn't even imagine coming here on Monday because we were still waiting. So just know that this is not anybody's first choice. This is not done with enthusiasm. It's not done with any joy. This is done with trying to hold it together so our doors can stay open and we can make it to that 3rd year out and get an approved budget. What I don't want to do, and I mean this very seriously, is go into a qualified setting again. When we went into that qualified budget that 1 year, that was horrible, because we had to itemize and list everything we were going to cut by position. It was excruciating. And it was so demoralizing to the people who were getting named. And we just can't go back into that place again. So we have to do what we can do to make sure that we get that multi-year projection approved so that we can just keep limping along. And then do what we can to really ask ourselves, what is absolutely necessary? What's absolutely mandatory? Start with the mandatory, necessary, desirable, and then move on under that umbrella. If this is mandatory, then we do it.
Well, and as a reminder, as you said in the beginning, this is with what we're looking at in the fall. This is not a forever. We're not looking at cutting all this forever. It's a necessary, well, horrible
this is our
thing,
right
but
now.
yeah.
This is our right now.
Anna, has anything come in from the public?
She's checking.
There is nothing still. Nothing.
Okay. I just want to remind anybody that is listening at home that if you have any concerns or questions, to please call your site. If it has a site, if it's a site item, please call your principals. They are still at work for a week or two, or Wendy or Becky, because I would encourage you not to email us. I mean, we would pass it on, of course, but we would like to, any big things or great ideas that you might have or something needs to go to the people working on this, because by the time it comes to us on the 25th, we have to approve or change something. It has to be approved to go to the county. So, you know, it's better to go right to the frontline people. Am I correct, Becky? Okay. So I'm just encouraging anybody that has any thoughts after all this to please go straight to the horse's mouth and
the horse would be me.
Well, or, you know, or the principals, but, you know, we will pass that on, but it's definitely not, we're not making the budget to bring to the meeting. Wendy and Becky are. So it'll have to get passed through the channels anyway. So go straight to the important people. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Becky, do you feel that you have a sense of what the five of us are thinking? Wendy, you too?
I get a sense that none of you like it, but you'll live with it. And that's really what I need to feel and hear from you. I don't think anybody likes what we're about to do, but I think everybody can live with it for 1 year because this has a direct impact on kids. Totally get it. So if everybody can live with it and we can live through next year, we'll be in a better spot 12 months from now.
Okay, last call before we're going to switch to some fun stuff. So we'll graciously, if there's no other board questions, comments.
Thank you, admin team. You can bug out.
Thank you very much for giving up almost 2 hours of your evening. And thank you for what you do for our students in our district.
Thank you.
Okay. These little hands are cute.
Oh, look at that.
The YouTube people are probably saying, what are you watching? Why do I not have the words? There's an option where you could say that you're only going to view people who have video, which is why you don't see the admin, because they all turned off their video. So anyway, so we're not just waving at each other. They're actually saying goodbye. But Nate, our esteemed streamer, has turned off the option so that you can't see people without video. They're all gone now. So here we go.
And Scott is with us, though. He's not on video, but just please know that our 5th board member is here.
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm going to turn off
my I'm moving around a bit, and it's a little distracting. I apologize.
Well, no, we can't see you. You're not on at all.
Right. That's why I turned it off, so you wouldn't be distracted by. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so we are going to move on to our action items tonight. Our 5.1 is a resolution of 20-10 interim permits for certificated staff and declaration for need of qualified educators. So this is our annual thing. Becky, do you have any other comments besides what's in the packet?
So when we hire teachers who are not fully credentialed and we do intern permits, provisional intern permits, or a short-term staff permit, we have to pass this resolution to show need. You don't just do it because you get to. You have to do it because you have to. And so we've had to do this now, I think, every year since I've been superintendent, because it's so difficult to find qualified teachers who will move into our area. We're pretty remote. Everybody knows this. So this is our annual resolution that we have to do in order to accept these positions for the next fiscal school year.
Okay. Board, is there any questions or concerns about this?
No.
Okay.
No.
So Diana, would you mind reading that for us? It's a pretty short one tonight.
Sure. Resolution 20-10 in the matter of a declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Whereas the governing board must declare the district's need for fully qualified educators based on the previous year's actual needs and projections of enrollment. And whereas the governing board must submit the declaration of need to the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing annually in anticipation of the need to hire individuals who are either scheduled to complete initial preparation requirements within 6 months, or candidates who are qualified to participate in an approved internship program in the region of the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the board, by submitting this resolution, is certifying that there are an insufficient number of certificated persons who meet the district's employment needs. Adopted June 11th, 2020.
Okay. All right. So if there are no questions or concerns with that resolution, I'll ask for a motion, please.
I move
Make a
to
motion that we pass resolution 20-10, declaration for need for qualified educators and internal waivers.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, Miss Anna.
Okay. Trustee Schneider? Trustee Schneider?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Okay. Trustee Matson?
Yes.
Trustee Makala?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
yes.
And President Babcock?
Yes. Okay. And Anna, I will be by first on my way to work in the morning to sign.
Thank you.
Okay. 5.2, personnel action report. So we have, this is for the whole year, correct? Or we're just adding the top people? No, never mind. Sorry, that's another list. Sorry. Okay, so we have.
Hold on, we just found an error in the personnel action report. Can we pull just one person off that, or do you have to pull the whole report?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, it's not in the consent item.
I do correct it and approve it with the correction.
Okay,
Right.
so we need to
It's not in the
correct
consent.
the new hires on Christina Mitchell. We're leaving her at 60%, not 1.0.
Okay, so any other questions or concerns? Okay,
Hold on,
so
I
when
think-
we
no, I
make,
think hold on just a second. Wendy, look at that again. I think that's correct. It says 4.8 hours.
No, it says from 4.8 to 8 hours per day, 5 days a week. And we're not doing that.
Oh, okay. Yes. We're leaving her at 4.8. Sorry. Thank you.
so then she just comes off, if she's staying at 4 point, does she just come off altogether? Because she's already at 4.8?
She is at 4.8. Yeah. So she just
And
comes
is
off.
she
Although
currently a
she does-
secretary 3?
She was covering a partial leave of absence, but now she's stepping into the position. So she still has to be on there as being hired into the position
Mhm.
as a probationary employee rather than a temporary employee filling in a leave of absence.
So we
I thought
just take out the
already
second
approved
line.
that. Didn't we already approve her last month?
I think we,
We pulled the personnel action report last month, remember?
Oh, okay.
Because we had to
That's
rescind things.
That's right.
so it's
Okay, so-
basically from Secretary 3 temp at 4 hours a day to Secretary 3 position 129 at
4
as a regular position at 4.8. So we just have to change the hours per day.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So when we make that motion, just please make sure that you've specified that for Anna.
So I move to approve the personnel action report, revising the new hire Christina Mitchell to her new position being 4.8 hours.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Anna?
Okay. President Babcock,
Yes.
Trustee Matson,
Yes.
Trustee Makala,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
and Trustee Schneider.
Yes, I was ready for that one. Thanks.
Okay, so we're moving on to 5.3, and this is Resolution 20-11 for a reduction in force. I would, Becky, if you wouldn't mind giving a little bit of background to the public for this one.
So if we are looking at different scenarios for reopening school and coming back, there's the very real potential that we won't have the work and or the money. But the work part is the part that concerns us. So with classified personnel, if we are deciding that come August 19th, the first day of school, we are going to eliminate certain positions because of lack of work or lack of funding, we have to give people 60 days notice to lay off or to do a reduction in force. What I will say is that every single person who is affected by this reduction in force that we're bringing to you, we've called them, we've talked to them. And my message to anybody who's watching who's on this list, I'm going to say, hold on, just hold on. When you land on a reduction in force, if you are a probationary employee, then what happens is you go on what's called a 24-month rehire list. That means for us in Fort Bragg Unified, as new positions become available that you are qualified to take, then we have to offer you those positions for the next 24 months. 24 months from the 60th day, which would be, today is June 11th, it would be the 60th day from August 11th. So from August 11th, count 24 months. So that means we have to keep you on this rehire list. And then as positions become available that you hold the qualifications for, we have to say, would you like this job? And we do it in the order of seniority. So yes, we are bringing before you a reduction in force to reduce work by the positions that you see on the second page. Instructional assistant, a secretary 2, which was the subcolor, transportation bus driver, and food service cook assistants. So those are the positions. It does, for right now, we fully intend not to start school with those positions. If something changes, then we can bring people back. If something changes and all of a sudden a position appears, everybody on the rehire list gets the option of coming back first, and that's all by seniority. If you are a permanent employee and not probationary, then you are on that rehire list for 39 months, 3 years and 3 months. So for people who are upset about being on the reduction in force list, I get it. I have received more RIF notices in my career. I think I can name 5. I just want to tell people and remind people to hold on. The rehire list works. We'll get you back. Just hang on and be patient with us. So with that, that's what you have before you. A reduction in force due to lack of work, because we don't know how the reopening plan is quite going to work just yet. We are going to be talking about the reopening plan at the June 25th school board meeting. So this is the mandatory 60 days that we have to give. If we wait till June 25th to do this, then it means that they are not laid off until August 25th. We have school beginning August 19th. That's why the timing of it is now. Questions?
You're faster than my mute. Okay. Anything from the public?
Let me check.
I'm sure this wouldn't be a... Okay. All right, nothing from the board? Okay. All right, I had you read it ahead of time. This one's longer. Do we want to read this one, or it is in the packet?
We don't normally read the...
Okay. I mean, there's no names, but anyway. Okay, so let's leave this one for people to view if they would prefer. So if there's no questions or concerns, I'll call for a motion.
I move we approve Resolution 20-11, the reduction in force.
I will second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, Anna.
Okay. Trustee Matson,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Makala,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
and President Babcock.
Yes. Okay, 5.4. Let me pull that up. Okay, so this is the tentative agreement that FBDTA and the district has reached.
So we began negotiating before COVID hit. And when I believe we gave the sunshine letters to the board back in November or December, and then we started negotiating, I believe our first day was February 6th. So from that February 6th meeting, we kind of got derailed a little bit with COVID closing down the school district on March 17th. But we did finish contract negotiations for this fiscal year. This is the product of that, the tentative agreement that we've developed or that we've agreed to. At the bottom, you will see that as far as salary is concerned, FBDTA agreed that for the 2021, 21, 22 school years, there shall be no reopeners except if the district receives more than 1% of new ongoing LCFF revenues above the 1920 funding. In that case, compensation only would automatically reopen. So we won't know if we're reopening or not that particular piece until after the governor's budget comes in within the next couple of weeks. But other than that, there's no big major changes to the contract. It's some language change, a few little day changes.
So how does that work with, you mentioned earlier that we're having the budget coming out June 15th, but that really it won't be till August 15th. They still could make changes and even into October.
Very true.
I mean, so we could reopen and have negotiations and then find out, oh no, we're not really giving you that money.
Correct.
Okay. Good to know.
And then Becky, on the November date, does that mean the teachers it'll be an in-service day, but the kids will be home on the first day of November?
So we have 5 in-service days in August. And one of the things that we've talked about that impacts our budget is professional development. And what happens is we get a whole slew of substitutes in here to release departments and to release grade levels so that we can do professional development mid-year. And folks will say, well, why do you need to do that? Well, we need to do that because when we start with the new curriculum or we're starting with a new initiative, it's difficult to have professional development or training on that at the beginning of the year and then you never touch it again. Really, the best time to train our teachers is when kids are in session, when they have the ability to stop. Okay, this is what I've done from August to October. This is what I'm discovering. Hey, trainer, how do I deal with this issue? Or let me learn about it right now so that I can bring it into my classroom come November. There are many school districts in our county who do this. Ukiah and Willits both follow this model where the first work day in November is a professional development day. And so we are going to take those 5 days at the beginning of the year and we're going to reduce it to 4. So it doesn't impact the number of school days. What it does is it brings a holiday to children. We like to call it Teacher Detention Day. And then the staff will have a professional development day, the first work day in November.
And that's why it doesn't.
Go ahead.
That's why it doesn't start till 20.
Right.
20, because we haven't done the calendar or we've already done next year's calendar.
Yes. So it's not going to
impact.
impact.
I want to make sure the public knows what's happening.
No, great question. It's not going to impact next year's calendar. It will impact the following calendar. So when I bring you a calendar proposal in August and September, like I usually do, this will be reflected in that. This has the potential to actually save us quite a bit of money because we won't have the substitute costs that we've had with this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's great to see that you get to have that follow-up. I know we used to always do that, and I'm really happy to see it's coming back.
Well, and we used to have the 2 days in Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So typically what happened years ago This is how old we all are, right? Sorry, you're all young. I'm old. But what
I was there.
What happened back in the late 90s when I started with the district in 1997, we still had 5 professional development days in the contract. 3 of them were at the start of the school year, and 2 of them were with Thanksgiving week. So all the kids still had the week off, but the teachers came in on Monday and Tuesday for professional development. Wednesday was a travel day. Thursday was Thanksgiving. And so we had that time in that first semester for professional development. So that slowly got erased and got moved into the beginning of the year. But I'm excited that we've agreed to this, because I think this is going to have a huge positive impact on how we provide professional development to our staff, a cost savings to the district because we won't have that need for as many substitute teachers. So I think this will be good. Kids not coming to school the day after Halloween. Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
No, it's a huge positive.
That's really what it means. So I apologize to the parents out there who we just, I don't know, maybe made Halloween just a little bit more fun.
Okay. Any questions for staff on, or for Becky, regarding the tentative agreement?
No.
Okay. All right, then I'll call for a motion. This is not a resolution, so we don't, okay.
Do you need a motion?
Yes, sorry,
okay.
I've not finished my sentence.
Okay.
I need a motion.
Oh, I move to approve the Fort Bragg District Teachers Association contract. Item 5.4, sorry.
And I will second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay.
Trustee Matson,
Yes.
Trustee Makela,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
President Babcock,
Yes.
and Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So
Hey,
we're on to
Catherine?
5. Oh,
Hey, our agenda says 6 to 8, so I don't know if there's a formality of extending the meeting so we can finish up what we need to do, but just a formality, I think.
it says 6 to 8 on the agenda.
I believe it does. It did on our invitation.
Oh,
Oh, I don't.
Just
I
on
didn't
the-
look at that.
That invitation, Jerry, was the invite to get you into this meeting.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Are we
Thank you
okay?
for looking.
Then we're good.
Do you need to be somewhere, or
Nope.
you're okay to stay? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. 5.5, migrant education intervention, and English language coordinator. So this probably needs a little bit of public.
So this is interesting. We had an EL coordinator position that was a teacher in the district years ago. And so we said, okay, we're going to reinstate this position and match it with the migrant ed grant that we are receiving and the migrant ed duties that we are agreeing to for that. So then we said, well, let's get out the job description and make sure that the job description matches what we're asking this position to do for the migrant ed duties, right? No job description can be found. So we looked on my computer, we looked on everybody's computer in HR, and we found the job description for Joanne Farrell's position, but that was an administrative position. But we had a teacher in the EL coordinator position years ago that was a full-time EL coordinator position or a half-time, but there's no job description for that. So Sarah McGee and Tina Kranoff met with Carolyn Carini to talk about what does that job description look like. So this is what you have in front of you. It's a little unique because it's really specific to this migrant ed EL coordinator position. So you'll see the wording from the grant specifically in this job description. So we would like to post this position, but we can't post this position because we have no job description. So we have to get the job description approved by you so that we can post the position tomorrow. And Kathy, I think you said something, but you were muted.
I was just, the grant stuff is what's in italics at the bottom.
Yes.
Okay. And the only thing I saw is that the date. So on number 3, it says fall of 2019. I think that should be 2020. And then number 8 should be 2021 school year. right? Because we're hiring for next.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then you mentioned it earlier, but the funding for this is it all being covered by the grant or by
No.
Migrant Ed?
So when do you want to, part of it's Migrant Ed, part of it, a little bit of Title III.
Mm.
When do you
Supplemental concentration.
supplemental concentration. So it's a milieu,
Mhm.
but we are getting more Migrant Ed funds, which is the impetus for this, because in the MOU that we signed with Migrant Ed, it's a specific call to these duties. So
is it a temporary position or is it permanent?
that's a great question. I'm going to say no, not temporary, because the duties aren't going to disappear. The Migrant Ed funding is, while it is a grant, we have had this Migrant Ed grant, gosh, since I can't, we've had it since forever. We just happened to get an increase in funding this year that was unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Am I describing this correctly, Wendy?
Yes.
Okay.
And do you expect that increase to be ongoing or is it a one-time?
We believe it's ongoing, but we received notification of the ongoing increase before COVID hit.
Okay.
So right now,
But it is federal dollars, so
that's
again,
the difference.
there are no reductions to federal dollars. So
All right. Okay.
Questions?
So we're not only approving the job description, but we're also approving these funds being allocated to this position too.
Those funds being allocated would really be done with the budget approval process. Not really here. But
If you're saying we can hire, we're saying we support that
Yes,
money being
yes.
spent that way.
yes,
I just want to be transparent.
thank you.
Any questions from the board for staff? Anything from the public, Anna? Okay. All right, if we don't have anything, I'll call for a motion, please.
I'll move to approve the Migrant Education Intervention and English Learner Coordinator position.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? I just want to comment that I know that we are in a reduction. You know, we've talked all night about how we have to give up things, but I just want to put my support in with, you know, this job has been in, you know, we've had it for years before. We did put some of those things back onto Becky and Carolyn, but I think if we do have some support in the funding, that I think it's a good thing to keep these kids moving forward, especially if we're in remote learning. We need somebody really monitoring the EL students and making sure these things are, and nobody slips through the cracks.
And if I could just give a round of accolades to Jean Whipple, Debbie Crowning-Shield, Tina Krenoff, and Marina Cochran-Keith. They served in the EL capacity this year and each took on the responsibilities for their sites and did a pretty amazing job really working with our kids and really monitoring and really being on top of them. We just don't believe that moving forward, that splitting it up into four is probably the best model at this point. They did a great job. They continue to do a great job. They're going to continue to look after their kiddos. We believe that in this landscape with what we have coming at us with COVID, that it's going to be more efficient if we can have one person really looking at those grand duties.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Annie, you can call the roll.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
Trustee Matson,
Yes.
President Babcock,
Yes.
Trustee Makela,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Okay. So we have now completed our action items. We do have a fun time. Do we need to take a stretch break or anything before, or are we good?
Let's go for it.
Okay.
And for
All
the
right.
public out there, we are about to begin looking at 119 pages of board policies.
It's longer than that.
Okay. And then there's no extra people, so I won't dismiss anybody. So before we get started, I had a question. So on the agenda, there's BP and AR 6142.7, which is the last item, but I couldn't, and it wasn't on last month, and I couldn't find, is it in the middle somewhere?
It should be at the end. If you looked at it earlier on in the day, it was not attached at the end. I did not upload the correct amended version.
Oh, that's what
It should be there now. And this was one that Wendy had asked to be added because it was, Wendy, maybe you should take that bit away.
So we're finishing up our federal program monitoring review, and one of the areas that's being reviewed is our physical education program. Apparently, there's been some recent language that is supposed to be included in board policies. I have to believe, and new enough that CSBA doesn't have it yet, but they were requesting that we add this language to our board policy in order to be compliant. And then I need to send them proof that it's, well, I actually already did. I sent them the agenda and the changes that are included in here. And I just went in and checked, and it says currently sufficient under that item in the evidence request. So we're good to go on that. It's required language. It kind of lumps all of the physical education requirements that they will be conducted without consideration for all of those things. So there's really just the one paragraph that had to be adjusted.
Okay.
I muted myself. So is there a red line version? No.
Yeah, there was. I thought I redlined out the part that was being removed and then added in green letters. The other one, I can email it to you quickly if you like.
Does anybody else see it in the end?
Yeah, it's in the very bottom.
Well, I see the board policy, but I don't see what's changed.
Yeah,
I'm just
not
trying
the
to
red
speed
line.
up what.
Okay, hold on. If you go through the other ones, I will email it to you.
Okay.
It is there, and it has red line, and it has green for new text, and it's only
here
a
it is.
small portion, and it's there's a
Oh, because it's not the last. It's not the BP.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was on the very last one.
yeah
Oh,
There it
no,
is.
that's
Okay.
okay for it.
yeah.
Thank you, Wendy.
Page 111.
Okay. So we can definitely go in order. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see what I missed, but we got it. Okay. So we want to start BP and AR 420.4, the charter. Well, the first four are charter school. Does anybody?
All of these are pretty standard. They're just law changes. I don't. Anna, am I right on that? That's what I saw when I was going through them.
Yeah, the charter school ones, they were all law changes, and there was nothing. I don't think there was anything with options or anything controversial.
Yeah, I didn't make any notes for options, so.
No, they changed like he, she to they, there, and those sorts of things.
Okay, any questions or concerns on the first four from any board members?
Nope.
Okay. All right, we will skip down to BP 3471, and that's parcel tax.
And that one had optional language.
Correct. So I did have a note with a little question mark that said, should we leave the optional out? I don't know what anybody else's notes
Can we
say.
go by page numbers rather than as we're
40.
scrolling?
Yeah, 41.
41. Thank you.
I'm scrolling to get there. Okay.
So this is actually a new policy, and it's an optional new policy. So we've never had it before, and we don't have to have it, but we can have it.
So it seems like since we just got the bond, we certainly don't need to ask for a parcel tax, and I certainly wouldn't even dream of asking for anything, any money from anybody right now. But does it hurt to just have it there?
So here's what I would recommend, just so that people don't get nervous that we're thinking about doing something or asking, because it's optional. I would just leave it off right now.
Leave it off.
Let's have it in the back burner. It's been edited beautifully. It's there. We can keep it current. When it comes up for a new renewal about editing the language, we can look at it again in a year or two. What are your thoughts?
I
think
had
that
made a
sounds
note
good.
to leave it out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I agree.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then we're moving to BP and AR food service operations.
Okay.
And then I had a
Pilar has been through these, and she did note that there were several areas of text that don't apply to us currently because we're a community eligibility program. But if we take those paragraphs or sections out, we would then be in a position of having to reinvent the wheel and put them all back in if and when we were not CEP. So she was kind of happy to leave them in once we had a conversation.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, and she does have whatever this is in that's required in 7-CFR 211030. Okay.
She is completely compliant.
Okay. Any other questions on that one? Okay, I do page 51. Sorry, I'm trying to read I've got arrows going every direction. An optional paragraph on page 51, something about a ticket.
There's on 49 as well. That's an optional paragraph.
Is that about where the ticket?
I think it's the same. Yeah, it's the
you
same.
don't want kids to be
identified.
Identified, yeah.
It's the same issue, goes over 2 pages.
Which even when we weren't doing things the way we were, kids just gave their number. Everybody, we still weren't doing tickets or anything.
Right. So are we going to leave? Then we can leave that out because we've never seen a reason to use tickets, except for when we do barbecues and stuff. But
even then, now it's not even. We don't do it anymore.
Oh, because everybody. Well, that was free. Everybody got one. Okay. So Anna, do you think we can leave that out? Okay. Are we all comfortable with leaving that out?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes, leave out. Okay. All right. So then we have BP 4112.9, employee notifications. And if I'm scrolling, I'll tell you, Jerry, what page that starts on. 54.
Thank you. There's another optional paragraph too that we blew by, I think. 152 optional section.
I think you decided to keep that optional paragraph out because wasn't that about the tickets as well?
Nope, there's another one.
No, there's another one on page 52.
Yeah.
And we do universal breakfast, so we probably should leave that in.
So are you looking at the optional paragraph at the bottom of page 52?
No, I was looking at the optional paragraph at the top of page 52.
There's the optional paragraph about the USDA foods. If you order and distribute USDA foods in California schools. We already looked at the paragraph above, which was about the breakfasts.
And this one is just about storage. I mean,
yeah,
you have to comply with that. There's no reason to not leave it in.
And we do participate in that program, so we should have that.
So leave that. Okay.
Okay, so then we're just taking out the one about the tickets, right?
Right.
Everybody's okay?
Mhm.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so employee notifications. I personally did not have any notes for this one. Anybody else have?
No.
All right. So then no comments. We'll go on to working remotely. It's on, oh, no, not far enough yet.
65.
66.
66, yeah, okay.
And this is a new policy and it is an optional policy.
So I have a note about something that says record of time worked, and I didn't know if, I'm a rule follower, so I'd be fine with filling out a thing, but I'm not sure, do we want to have somebody be patrolling that, or do we just leave this out? And
So what I would recommend at this point, because it's optional, is just holding on to it, because we are going to have to bargain with both CSEA and FBDTA to get into next year, because there is a change in working condition. Both the MOUs that we had bargained in March to address the change in working condition expire on June 30th. So I don't want to adopt a board policy on this without having a discussion with them, just so that we are maintaining a good working relationship and not giving the impression that we're putting the cart before the horse, or not giving them the ability to have input. So I'd like to hold off on this policy until we get the MOU squared away.
okay, I agree. Anybody else have something against that idea?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So BP and AR 5141 50.52 suicide prevention. I just had a note that have we consulted legal and the insurance about that this all complies with what they'll support?
No, we usually get a legal update about things like this too, and we haven't. But I can send this off to Nancy and ask her what school and college legal recommends.
Let's see what the other board, because I don't want to impose any or incur any costs. So if everybody else thinks, let's go with the groups.
I have to tell you, when I was skimming through this quickly, there wasn't anything in here that gave me shock and awe. And our counselors do a really great job with the SOS curriculum. Mary Iverson does a lot with that as well. So there was nothing in here that I thought, well, am I worried about it?
So I just didn't really know what was at the elementary level, what was happening at that level. That was the only thing I didn't know. This is K-6.
Number 6.
Oh, it says grade K through 6.
So that's probably going to be more of our SEL, our socioeconomic, our social emotional learning curriculum.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any concerns with? We're good with that one?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then we have VP and AR 5144.1 suspension and expulsion.
87. Page 87 option.
That had option 1 or option 2. Option 2 is where teachers had the right to suspend a student for defiance and disruptions. And as a former teacher, I think that's important to leave in.
So suspension is a very loose term here. It's not out of school suspension. It's suspension from class, right?
Right.
So that's the difference, just so that folks know.
Right.
The only person who can do an out of school suspension is your administrator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so are we gonna, what's recommended, option 1 or option 2?
What page are you on, Mary?
I'm looking. I'm on
79.
I know they don't.
Okay.
I think it's
And
88.
the only difference in the options is that the option 1 is K through 8, and the second option doesn't specify the grade levels.
Hmm.
And I would say that you keep it option 2.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we've had it. This has been an ed code since I've been a teacher as well. But there's also really good guidelines that we follow as a district. If you as a teacher are going to suspend a student from being in your classroom for up to 2 days because of defiance or because of disruption, there's a protocol that we need the teacher to follow. So we need to contact the parent. We need to have a conference. We need to figure out what the cause was. What was the why? How did we land there? How can we fix it? How can we repair the harm, restore, and rebuild the trust? If there wasn't trust there, how can we build trust? So there's more to it than just a flip of a switch, you're out of here. It really needs to be a whole process to make sure that kids are having the ability to recover, repair, and the same with the teacher, that they have the ability to help repair and restore.
I think Jerry had some. Were you? Oh. Okay.
Jerry, you're not muted. Did you have a question? Okay.
He's not muted.
I thought I heard him say something. Okay.
Yeah, I did too.
And then on page 88, now that you've selected option 2, that affects the second set of options. So,
Yay for us. Okay, 88.
No, I think it takes it out of your hands, so it's actually good. If you selected 1, you do this. If you selected 2, you have this.
Okay, so you'll just update that.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we are on to distance learning. BP 6157.
It's brand new.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to the first page.
102, I think.
I'm almost there. There we go.
That was a long one.
Okay. So this one looks like let's see. We have an optional.
And again, I'm just going to ask that we hold off on this until we get, until we have the opportunity to work with our bargaining units.
Okay. Okay. That's what I wrote. Yeah. Okay. So then we're moving on to the concurrent enrollment. Starts on 105. I wrote something about 5%. Now I have no idea what that's about. Does anybody else have that written down?
Yeah, that was like the max cap for adults to go enter into.
Oh, that's what, yeah.
I think.
To be
So
on campus, maybe?
Years ago, I was the high school principal, and we passed a resolution or a policy so that we could have adults on campus during our dual enrollment courses or our concurrent enrollment courses with the college. At the time we had passed it, we had just begun our relationship with Mendocino College. So this has a little bit of that. We are also working with the college to have certain courses that are dual enrollment classes on Fort Bragg High School campus that only allow high school kids to be in it so that there won't be any outside adult participation. And I'm forgetting what the name of that is called, but there's a
CCAP, College
CCAP.
and Career
Thank you, Mary. Good job.
Yeah, and they're great class. I mean, it's a win-win for the high school and the college because the kids still get their credits, but no adults are in it. And you can stretch a class that's typically a college class is a semester, and the high school class can stretch it over the course of the whole year and set their own pace. So it's nice. And the kids still get the college credit.
So speaking of that, did the kids that were in college classes this semester get credit? Oh,
They finished.
Yay.
They finished.
even like freshman seminar?
Um,
No, they were signed up.
they were.
Right, but I mean, if a kid didn't do the work,
I need to ask about freshman seminar. I know Western Civ finished, and I know the Spanish classes finished. I'm trying to think of what other second semester classes we had at the college other than the freshman seminar. I'll have
I
to
was
ask.
just trying to figure out because the kids didn't, this whole thing about not having to do the work. I was just wondering if they all kind of went.
I wonder, I think there were 36 kids that did the interviews at the end. And so they
That's it?
completed 30, it was voluntary, 36 kids.
Wow.
But the kids that did it, they were amazing. Those interviews were, I'd never done an online. Well, I can't say that. I have done a couple of interviews this way, but geez, 14 and 15-year-olds doing it, they were very impressive.
Oh, neat.
So I would assume
Wow.
they should
I'm
have
just sorry.
gotten
I'm sorry.
credit. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Sidebar.
on there, we're on page 108 where it talks about the following optional sections for districts that have entered into CCAP agreement with the board of a community college district. We are in the process of entering that. So I'm going to say that we're going to need that optional section.
Okay.
Well, and it says to reflect district practice. We just have to make sure what it says is what the agreement's going to say, right? So should we wait or no? Sorry, my page numbers don't come up. 108. It says should be or maybe revised to reflect district practice.
Are you going to look at these for action on the June 25th meeting, or are you going to hold off your action on the June 25th meeting? I don't think it's going to impact us either way, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, gotcha.
So just have it include it all is what you're thinking?
Yeah.
It'll match up to the agreement? Okay. Are we fine with that, board?
Yes.
Gentlemen?
Unmute.
Sorry, yeah.
I talk. Yes, I'm fine with that.
Darn mute button.
Okay. Okay. Then we are on to the PE one.
And the
Which
only
I-
paragraph is on page 111, the expanded paragraph.
Okay. Thank you.
And that was language provided to us by the federal program monitoring reviewer.
And I'm not a lawyer, but Diana, that seems like the normal statement that right? The whole,
Equal opportunities for all.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody have a chance to review that?
Yes.
Okay. Any concerns?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Anything else that didn't get addressed in the board policies that anybody has concerns with?
How will we be doing PE? Will that be a virtual?
Right now, we're being told that there's more than likely going to be flexibility with PE minutes. So it might be some kind of a PE log. It might be that we can hold PE classes, but it's going to be social distancing. So is that running on the track? Is that yoga? Is that Zumba? Is that something that's not physical contact and no sharing of touching equipment? So right now we know that the weight room is probably going to be off limits. No ball sports.
Right.
We just don't know quite yet.
The distant learning, it was great for PE. They could do a video of them participating in something or their lesson at the middle school level. So something similar to that probably would be in a log. So that's self-paced.
Okay. So if we don't have any, Anna, you have all the notes on what comes out, and we'll see all these again next month for approval, or not, sorry, in 2 weeks, right?
Kathy, I did have one thing, not about this, but about Three Rivers, and reading through all those policies and so forth, that I feel like one of us, maybe we could rotate through and one of us should attend those meetings each month.
I've been attending there.
I know you have. And you you attend everything. But I feel like one of the board members that we should maybe rotate it, and just, I don't know, it seems like a good idea. Maybe not, but
it's been brought up before. So it's definitely not a new idea. And are they doing virtual now?
They are, yeah. I did last month, and it was, I mean, it's not a huge commitment of time because they go to closed session afterwards. And so I've done one virtual and one in person, and I think I was maybe a little over an hour each time.
They're pretty quick, I will have to say.
Yeah, they're pretty quick.
Very efficient.
They really appreciate that, like, they were just all over themselves the first time I went, oh my God, and so that's why I went to the virtual one. And I just feel like it's a great way to support them and just be more involved. And it does say that, that the board has some oversight, and it's a good way for us to know what's going on.
Well, we could definitely just get their annual calendar and assign. And then, of course, if Becky wants to continue to go, there's no reason why we can't have a board member and the superintendent, but it probably would be a good idea to just put it on our calendars.
There are times when they have questions, and so I've been happy that I've been there. They're a pretty self-sufficient board. There's nothing funky going on. They do a good job. They meet. They have an efficient meeting.
Well, it might be simpler than trying to, sign up. If we just made it the person that's on agenda setting. If they can't make it, of course, flip-flop like we do with agenda setting, but maybe if we all agree that we can try to make that commitment,
that's a good idea.
We'll just add it as, maybe even ask Anna to put that on our calendar. Not the but that, I have it somewhere here. The one with the agenda setting on it, this one.
Right.
And if we just add that date on there, maybe it would work.
That's a good idea.
You're muted, Becky.
Sorry, third Tuesday of the month. I think they're third Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
It's currently still on
right.
actual board's calendar, so I will just go through and allocate out to who is the specific person to go, and then you guys can deal with it.
And so as long as they were doing virtual, I just emailed Roger, and then he sent me a link.
Okay.
So I'll do it next Tuesday because I'm on agenda setting.
Okay. And then it looks like, aren't I sometime in there, or was that the 18th? I always get confused on when I'm considered actual agenda setting, but I think it's
that was
the one
the
that got
18th.
canceled. Yeah. And then now I'm in November. Okay. But Anna will figure it out for me.
Well, we're not until November.
When I'm not president anymore, I won't forget these things, I don't think. Okay. All right. So our next meeting, that is a regular meeting on the 25th. And then also remember that the link on the agenda is there for the COVID-19 FBUSD resource page and the parent resource page that we have. So, and please remember that Children's Fund has supported, along with the district, for the food, the meals to happen the rest of this, to the end of July on Tuesdays at Redwood and Dana Gray. So please pass that along to families if they've thought that stopped. There is pickup on those days 11 to 1. So please remember that.
And also delivery out to the remote sites.
Okay.
Right. And
So
that's for the
delivery out to
whole
remote sites. And were you going to say something, Scott?
Just a quick question before we go. Has there been any discussion or talk about when we can start doing these in person again, even 6 feet apart?
So in my email, I just received a new public,
Yeah, I saw that.
a new release from the public health officer. So we'll have to start looking at that. I know that the city council is returning to town hall, so we can look at that as well. I'm going to reach out to other school districts and see what they're doing. I'm a little reluctant to come back right now just because we don't have a big board meeting room. I mean, we could go back to Diedrich Center. That's a bigger space. I'm just a little worried about it right now. I'm going to suggest that we keep going remote for a little bit. Number one, because our COVID cases are starting to bloom here on the coast. And so I'm just a little, I don't want to put us in a position to start encouraging a crowd.
Sure.
Well, I think we have, definitely finish out June remotely and then see where we are in August.
It's a good idea.
Great.
Yeah.
And then just to piggyback on the food bank has been incredibly kind and generous. The James G. Cummings Foundation made a donation for food to go out to families with children. So we passed out papers this week to all of our families who came in and got food on Tuesday and told them that if you head out over to the food bank, you're going to get an extra box of food, which was great because they can give you things that the school district can't. Like they got a dozen eggs, they got milk, they got cheese, they got a pound of butter. They received mac and cheese, a jar of peanut butter. Those are things that we can't give out as a school district. So the food bank really gave some pretty great stuff this week to families. So that's an optional donation that came from James G. Cummings Foundation. So thank you to them. And that will continue. The food bank will continue through August 18th. They're going to pick up, August 11th. They're going to pick up the first 2 weeks of August where we drop off so that families can continue getting food. So the school meals will continue through July 28th, and then the food bank will pick up the next 2 weeks so that families can still get fed. And then we come back to school on the 19th, and we'll have food for folks then.
And also those debit cards that you guys were mentioning through the state. I mean, I hope families are doing that because that's pretty amazing.
So those debit cards were sent out to families who have who are receiving social services, and then anybody in our school district can still apply because we are a community eligibility funded district.
Anybody, like just to clarify, anybody in our school in our district can apply, and
everybody in our school district can apply.
And the cutoff.
Harvest, Safeway, whatever you want.
Yep.
It's awesome.
The cutoff date is June 22nd.
Okay.
So make sure you apply before that.
Okay. And maybe what we can do, Anna, is we can send out an Aries All call to remind people to do it.
Okay. And we also have the link on the front page of our website, and it also has a link to the email address, which we've found is the most helpful at getting answers to any questions you may have.
And then if there's a family for the first time that would be getting a meal during the summer, should they call someone? Because they probably have their numbers of, during the school year, but maybe there's a group of, now a family that's not working during the summer that would need the bag of food. Should they call and say that they're
they just show up right.
Just show up and you'll have enough. Yeah.
Yep.
Always.
Yeah.
And this is the whole coast, as I understand.
Right. So we're serving, it doesn't matter. If you have a child, we don't care if you live in Wallala or Mendocino or Casper. You come to Redwood or Dana Gray on Tuesdays between 11 and 1. Tell us how many children you have, and that's how many bags of food you will get. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic status is. Okay. I have Russell at home. I can go get a bag of food. If you have a kiddo at home, 18 years or younger, and let's say your kiddos are home from college and they're 18, you can go pick up a bag of food.
Wow.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Okay. Any other last reminders or? Okay.
Are you guys going to get a break at all?
Oh.
What'd you say, Scott?
You guys going to get a break at all?
Who's we? Me, Wendy, Anna?
Your office, district office. No?
I'm taking tomorrow off.
Well, I know that we can't tell you how to work, but if, just takes breaks when you can, you deserve it.
Yeah. Thank you for all your efforts. It's day in and day out. You guys live, sleep, for the district.
And as a parent of a graduating senior, I just want to thank you guys for all the work on the parade and the communication with the families and dealing with parents like me, and just, you guys have been fantastic. So thank you for all the work.
I have to say hats off to the high school and to the alt-ed staff. The graduation parades, I have to tell you, I got teary more than once. It was incredibly touching. And then on Thursday, June 4th, it was a late night to watch the promotion, the virtual promotion ceremony, and it was touching. Mm-hmm. It was really very sweetly done. It was incredibly sentimental. And what I love about it is that that's a nice little keepsake for families. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just, amid all the chaos and the frustration, I think we pulled off some good memories for our kiddos. It was incredibly sweet. So thank you all for being there, and thank you to the high school, and shout out to all the people who did so much. We have some senior parents who did an amazing job of just pulling things together. I thought it was definitely a team effort. And I loved how our first responders came out. The ambulance was there. The CHP had Pomp and Circumstance playing.
Yeah, that was great.
It was great. So it was pretty touching, I have to say. It was a very moving day. And
do we have a video? Anyone that went on the parade, do we have a video of what the crowd was like from the trail to the high school? Because from what I'm told, we were all standing there clapping. But from what I'm told, the community engagement, the number of people that came out was phenomenal. So I don't know if one person filmed the whole thing, or if you've seen any videos of that. No? Okay.
I haven't seen videos. I've just seen pictures on Facebook and other sites, social media sites who had collected a myriad of pictures. It was very well done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And since we're giving shout outs really quick, and I know we need to leave, but the awards night at Fort Bragg High School was done so well. That made me cry too. And some of them were crying, which made me cry more, but it was done so well. It was great.
Mary, you and I have been crying at that thing for years.
I know. That's what I said after I watched it. I said, oh my God, you made me cry online.
But since you brought that up, Mary, that's the one thing I was thinking through all of these videos. Megan had a video every week for Ag, is that the parents can then, the kids will want them when they're 30, or maybe 40. But
right.
It's something we can keep now, and even in the awards night. I mean, I've always thought that it's like, oh, they said such nice things, but about kids, and it's gone. But that is now historical, and the parents can have that forever. So I do like that piece of these virtual things.
Yeah, no, it's been great.
Well, and I have to tell you, just the level of participation is much greater. Awards night is always tricky because it happens during the gauntlet of the evening. So if you have little kids, you can't typically as a teacher come to awards night because you're in the middle of, dinner, bath, books, and the whole bedtime routine. And because it was virtual, every teacher participated. It was pretty amazing. And to just hear how folks talked about our students, incredibly heartwarming. So it's been a tough year. No one could expect that we landed here. And if we all were in this place last year, 12 months ago, we would have said, no way, this is not what we're doing. And how quickly things changed. I will tell you, though, how wonderfully impressed I am with our community on how everybody's responded to really wrap their arms around our graduates. It's been pretty great. And someone even said to me, hey, is this a new tradition? I don't know. It might be.
That's what I was thinking.
I think the general trend was to think that this is something that's going to have to go on into the future. A lot of parents have said they want that for their upcoming graduates. So be warned.
Well, and I was thinking to ask parents that had, because it's really about the families, right? If the parents can, or the families can see it, but a family that had somebody go through this one and then someone go through a traditional and see if it's something, what families think about it. It was wonderful.
I think the families that I heard from said that they really liked it because they got to ride in the vehicle with their graduate rather than being separated and watching from a distance. That was kind of special.
Yeah.
And then I had someone who shall not be named say, yeah, it was great. We could fast forward through all the speeches.
Oh,
And,
I heard that as well.
oh no.
but I have to tell you, the speeches were pretty great from the kiddos. No one wants to hear from the adults, but it's always fun to watch the kids give the speeches because those are that's really where the message is. So fast forward for the adults, but really take your time and listen to what the kids are saying.
Yeah.
The young people, because our graduates are not children.
Yep.
All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Oh, you need someone to adjourn first.
Oh, thank you. See, I'm getting all excited that we're.
I've been waiting for 5 minutes for this, Kathy.
Sorry, Jerry.
Motion